Bonjour à tout le monde et bienvenue à ce 11e épisode du podcast Tune In avec Sarah et Harry. Et aujourd'hui, le thème est légèrement différent, je pense. C'est un peu différent parce que c'est pas un thème avec un objet certain dans le titre du chanson. Mais au lieu de ce thème, on a un thème plus général, plus vaste. Et le thème aujourd'hui, c'est...
Okay, you haven't clicked on the wrong podcast. This is still, the normal, regular thing. I don't know what Harry said. I don't speak French, but I'm going to try and work it out. But I think he said, hello, everyone. Tout le monde is the world, so everyone. And welcome to the 11th episode of the podcast. Then you said...
And basically our theme for this week is a little bit different from normal.
Okay, I didn't get that bit.
Yeah, I knew that as soon as I got past the opening bit, it would just be over your head and everything gone. But this week is a little bit different because we've kind of gone back into something that was quite similar to what we did a few weeks back, where we did a film episode. So this week we are doing
a video games episode. Woo!
Woo! Fun fact, actually, we were actually going to do this podcast on video games before we decided that was a really bad idea. But we did think that we would do video game music somewhere down the line, and so here we are.
So yeah, we've obviously picked our top 5 pieces or songs as part of the soundtrack of a video game. And we've got a question submitted by Jack, so thank you, Jack, for the question. And then we've also got what we've been listening to this week. But the first bit's just a little bit different.
Yes, so the first bit is basically just the songs which we have either as part of a soundtrack, so are put into a game, or that are composed for the game in question. So without any further ado, let's kick off with Sarah's list.
Yeah, I want to make a tiny disclaimer beforehand that I really struggled to pick anything that wasn't sort of composed for the game. A lot of the games I like to play don't tend to have like songs featured in them, like popular songs in them, or I just didn't do a very good job of finding them. I'm not sure which one is which, but I tried to pick games that I'd played and like the soundtrack to, apart from this first one, which I haven't played the game for, so I'm sorry if I make any mistakes in terms of how the game is played and where this fits into the game itself. So the first game that I picked was Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. And the piece that I picked was a piece called On the Horizon. The whole soundtrack's composed by Brian Tyler, who is a very accomplished film and video game composer. This was actually the piece that got me into video game music because I think it's just incredible, but we'll unpack that in a bit. So the game itself was released in 2013 and made by Ubisoft. So the story is set in 18th century Caribbean during the golden age of piracy, and it follows a Welsh pirate called Edward Kenway. The gameplay focuses on a seamless open world map and ship-based exploration, which goes in with the piracy theme, as well as melee combat and a really good stealth system, which I have seen a little bit of. Music-wise, I didn't realise this, but there was also a separate album that they released of sea shanties from the game, which I thought was pretty cool. And also, I should probably mention that additional arrangements and compositions were provided by Sarah Schachner. I'm very sorry if I butchered that name. Yes.
Schachner.
Thank you. And this piece, she worked on this piece with Tyler as well. I like this piece in particular because it gives like a really nice reflective atmosphere, I think, from the violin, especially at the beginning and the end. The middle section very much reminds me of like Pirates of the Caribbean, like really old Pirates of the Caribbean, specifically with the use of like the heavy percussion. And I think that element combined with the really interesting chords and the slightly quirky instrumentation compared to like a classical orchestra creates a really unique sound, and that's why I really like this piece.
Now, unlike Sarah, I have actually played Assassin's Creed 4, and it is my favourite one that I've played. I think that was the last one that I played to an extent, but Assassin's Creed 4 is my favourite by a mile because I love the pirate combat, and this piece is great. Like, it works so well with it, and I can't remember it like when actually playing the game itself, because I haven't played it properly in about 5 years or so. But it's like a good mixture of contemplative and like active. So, as someone who has never played the game, so you haven't played any Assassin's Creed before?
No.
From what I gather. Okay, so as someone who's never played it, would this music therefore draw you to it more, or is it just nice to hear on its own?
Yes. Easy answer is just yes. I really want to play this game. I just don't have any consoles that I could play this game on, which is why I don't have it. That's purely the only reason I don't have it. However, I specifically want to play this game more than the others. I just prefer the sound of the music. Like, I just prefer the sort of piratey sound, if you like. I've always loved the Pirates of the Caribbean music. And I always like that sort of sound, hence, and also like the pirate metal. I know that's got nothing to do with it, but that piratey kind of sound I've always liked.
Yes!
So, it kind of makes me want to play this game more than the others. And also the gameplay, I've seen a few like clips of people playing the game, and it looks really cool. So yeah, I do want to play it. I just don't have the means to play it.
Yeah, from what I gather, again, I'm not an Assassin's Creed connoisseur by any means, because I haven't played any of the last 4 or 5 games, but from what I gather, it was like this game and then the next 1 or 2 games, but then after that it's been like a steady decline. And I think a lot of people were saying like AC4 is like one of the best games in the series because of the introduction of the pirate combat. So the music ties into that brilliantly, and I remember the sea shanties as well. So it was nice to when you brought that up. I was like, oh yeah, I do remember the sea shanties being sung. But yeah, the pirate combat in this game is actually really, really good. It won't be that much because it's 2013. I think it'll be like 10 quid or something.
I'll definitely look into that then. Also, I'm not very good at these kind of games.
Neither am I. I still enjoy them.
I'm bad at like stealth on Animal Crossing. So think about like stealth on Assassin's Creed. I'd be horrendous.
Yeah, that wouldn't be the best. That wouldn't be the most conventional of step ups, but
no.
I could be proven wrong.
Anyway, I'll move on to the next piece, which is the rest of them. I have played these games before, and this comes from one of my favourite game series of all time, Legend of Zelda. I don't need to say any more, I don't think. This one comes from arguably critically and also for me the best game that was made, the Ocarina of Time. And the piece I've picked from this is Gerudo Valley, and it was composed by Koji Kondo, as was I think all of the other games, if not most of the other games, and Mario and all the other Nintendo games around this time. So it was released in 1998, obviously by Nintendo. If you haven't played Legend of Zelda, this particular game revolves around a character called Link, who is in all of the games, in Hyrule, which is the area that they're in, on a quest to stop the evil King Ganondorf by travelling through time and navigating dungeons and an overworld map. Also, fun fact, this game has the highest rating on Metacritic. I didn't realise this until I looked it up, but it's, according to Metacritic, the best game of all time, which I'm not going to argue with. It was a pioneering game in terms of the features that it introduced, such as a target lock system and context-sensitive buttons. In terms of the music, which is why I like this game so much, is the fact that it's very, very important to the story, as the player learns songs on the in-game ocarina in order to progress with the story. All the music is playable on the 5 notes produced by the in-game ocarina, and I remember reading an interview that said Kondo said it was really challenging to compose a piece that at least the first bit could only be played with the 5 notes, but he managed to work out a pretty good soundtrack with it. So in terms of Gerudo Valley, it's like a really blistering hot desert-like valley, and then beyond it lies what's called the Haunted Wasteland. So it's quite a barren area and quite a hot desert-like climate. And I think the piece really creates that atmosphere and enhances the atmosphere of this like hot climate. In my opinion, through its use of like syncopation, the instrumentation it uses, and the sort of the harmonies it uses, it sort of brings you to that place. It's quite simple because it could only use those 5 notes on the ocarina, but it is very, very effective in my opinion.
I mean, I haven't played this game. I think all the other games that video games that Sarah sent through the music to, I haven't actually played. Zelda is the only one out of the 3 that she sent, or the 4 she sent through, I really want to get involved in a lot more. But this song, again, I need the context more, but it was all right. I didn't like enjoy it. I didn't hate it. It was okay. I can understand why it's that. I mean, obviously, you know, it's focused on the 5 notes. I thought it was quite tango-like. I don't know why, but it sounds quite, you know, a Spanish flavor to it, especially with the drums. But as you say, it is like really repetitive, I think, because again, it just revolves around those 5 notes. So, do you think it's kind of like it can be excused because either it's to do with the ocarina or because it's like the early days of video game music, because this was released, 1997, 98?
98, yeah.
98, yeah. So it's still not overly developed as much as it is now. So do you think that's maybe a reason why it could be potentially excused?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that, you know, he had limited notes to work from makes it so simple. But in terms of the repetitive nature, I do think that comes from a combination of it sort of being an earlier time, and then also the fact that the music isn't. I did say the music originally was sort of the focus of this game, but only the first bit that you have to play, and then the rest of it is playing in the background as you're just walking around Gerudo Valley. So it doesn't need to be this amazingly complex piece of music. I mean, I think I mentioned this in the film one as well, but a lot of scenes where there's action or like you have to do something else, the music doesn't need to be this really, really complex piece. But also, it's hard to think about how long you're going to be walking around a video game. Unlike a film where the scene is a certain length of time and you can compose music for that length of time, for a video game, you could literally be walking around there for hours and the music would still have to keep going. So that's probably a more practical reason as to why it is so repetitive.
Yeah, it's a bit like a track as well, on like a race course or something that has a soundtrack to it. It's like the song, it just keeps on going round and round and round, regardless of how long you stay on that track for. It will just replay itself. So
yeah,
it wasn't to do with like the repetition of, you know, the it going back around and therefore the repetition of the song as a whole, but it was more like the repetitiveness of the song as the song itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, it sort of ties into that point that it, you know, has to keep going as long as the player is playing in that area.
Yeah.
Because you don't want it to deviate too much from that theme, because then when it cycles back round again, you're going to notice when it's ended, if that makes sense. You're going to notice when it started up again, whereas if it's quite similar, it tends to sort of blur into the background. And then you can just keep repeating it as much as you want because the player's not really going to notice. I do see your point, though, of the music rather than the repetitiveness is being repeated. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, as it being redone.
Yeah,
or like reheard. Yeah, I didn't mean it like that. I meant it like just in the actual song itself, not as an overall thing. Because I understand how video games work. I do understand.
As in, I do think they're linked though in the terms that, imagine if you were playing a game and you were listening to the piece, and it developed so much that it sort of gone. It hadn't completely obviously strayed away from the original idea, but it developed so much they got to a point where it did sound like a different piece, and then suddenly it jumps back in again with that old stuff. You're going to notice it a lot more. Okay, I'm going to move on to my third piece now, and it's from one of my newish favourite games. It's not actually that new, to be honest. It's about 5 years old, but it's Undertale. And the piece that I've picked is a Ghost Fight, and it was composed by Toby Fox, who also developed the game, directed the game, did some of the artwork for the game as well, so it's very much his baby and his project. In the game, you play as a child who's fallen into the underground, which is a large, secluded sort of area of monsters, separated from like our world by a magical barrier, and you have to go through and fight these different monsters, and depending on whether you actually choose to fight and kill the monsters or you choose to sort of talk them out of fighting, you have different outcomes. You have a pacifist, a neutral, and a genocide outcome, depending on whether you choose to fight them or not, and then you get different endings according to what you do. If you don't know this game, the inspirations apparently for this game, which is kind of interesting, are a game called Earthbound, which is a SNES roleplay game, a game called Brandish, and Mario and Luigi, the roleplay series, the Touhou Project, which is a bullet hell shooter series, which is where the combat style comes from, and also Mr. Bean. Now, I'm not really sure where this bit comes in. I'm guessing it's probably the comedy aspect to it, because it is a funny game to play. I'm guessing some of the comedy inspiration will come from that. There's a bit of like slapstick in it and some just kind of funny lines. The game has a sort of vintage feel to it, as it's inspired by a lot of these old SNES games, and so was the music. So the music was inspired by the same games like Earthbound. And also, a little fun fact, he composed the music prior to the programming, as it helped him dictate how the scene would then go on. But this piece in this piece in particular, I really like the sort of the jazzy feel to it, and then this chromatic bass line that goes down. It sort of adds to the silliness of the scene and the sort of juxtaposition of the character, because the ghost is very like shy and very unsure of himself, and then this sort of jazzy, brash piece comes in, and it sort of adds to the comedy aspect of it.
Okay, I think that actually helps a lot more with the context of things, because like I was like a bit on the fence with this one as well. I did like the mixture of the swing feel and the modern electronic music. I did like that. I also thought it sounded like the introduction, especially. I got very much like a Mario Party DS ambience.
Yeah.
I felt like if I put this game into Mario Party DS, it would not look anywhere near out of place, especially with the more compressed kind of sound, which I know that he was aiming for.
Yeah.
However, I did also pick up, obviously, like when the more drummy comes in, there's like a vocal chopping technique used. So I was wondering what you thought of that in this song and maybe elsewhere, because one of the songs which I've mentioned before, Shelter by Porter Robinson and Madeon, that predominantly features vocal chopping, but I think they do that one really well because it blends in with the ambience of the song. Whereas with this one, I thought it kind of seemed a little bit jarring, but I don't know, I couldn't put my finger on why, but to me it just sounded, I don't think it melded into the music as well as it might have done.
I think it's just like he wanted some, like if you think about it, if this music was made by real instruments and real people, he would want someone to sing it, but it's all electronic. And in the context of being inspired by the SNES games, I think in this context I think it fits because it's not actually someone singing, it's the MIDI sound of someone singing, because that's what it was composed from.
Right.
So in the context of being inspired by these SNES games and having a very much vintage 90s gaming feel to it, it fits with that sound world, because it will just be someone inputting that sound on, playing the notes on a keyboard. So it will sound like vocal chopping, but I don't think there was anyone ever originally singing it, if that makes sense. Okay,
but what do you think of it, like, not just in this song, but also like as a whole? Do you like the idea, or is it something that maybe you wouldn't gel with as much?
In the right context. It's all a very context-based question. If it was in like any of the songs that I would listen to, probably not. It's not something I would necessarily choose to listen to in a pop song setting, or like the kind of music that I would choose to listen to.
Yeah.
But in this context, it fits, and then I'm assuming in your sort of music context, it also fits.
I think it can fit in like electronic music, but if done well, and if it like melds in and it forms a basis for a melody line as opposed to just being like basically, because there's one song, I think it's Gold by Kiara. They do vocal chops in that, but it's like it just goes all over the place. Whereas with Shelter, the one I mentioned earlier, it's very set in stone, and it's singable, so it's not like completely computer processed, but it has that kind of melding in quality that I don't think the one in Gold does. Put it that way.
I actually know that song, and I quite like it. It does what you don't expect it to do, and that's why I like it. And I think it does fit in with because it's not like they haven't taken one note, and I don't think they've taken a note and like changed the pitch of it. I think they've just taken very small snippets of her singing and made a melody out of it, which I think is quite a unique thing to do, rather than taking one note and changing the pitch. Which I personally, I mean, I'm not in the electronic music world, so I hadn't heard that before, and I thought, oh, that's quite unique. That's quite, and I think that fits pretty well in with the rest of the song. Again, I'm not an electronic music expert, so I don't really know, but that was my take from it. I'll move right on to my fourth pick, and that's from a new game that I discovered called The Pedestrian. And this piece I picked is called The Escape, and it was composed by Logan Hayes. This was actually released in January this year by a company called Skookum Arts LLC. It's a 2D sort of design game where you play as a person in like street signs, if that makes sense. And it's like a side-scrolling puzzle platformer, using different mechanisms and different things like buttons and switches and things to pass each level. It quickly became one of my favourite games because it's such an original and unique idea, because you play on these like road signs and work and office signs and stuff, but the background detail of the game, it's very, very realistic. And it's so unique, and also all the sound design. The score for me is exceptionally composed and sort of, I don't want to say it's too good for the game because the game itself is amazing, but it does sound like it's got like a full orchestra and it has these amazing like whimsical ethereal sounds. It doesn't necessarily sound like it fits in with the style of game, but it does sound, but it's amazing. The game itself and the music is incredible. But this piece in particular highlights the use of like the harmonies that they use and the chord sequences and the incredibly vast instrumentation. And the reason I picked this piece because I really liked the opening sort of record effect, I think that's what it is, like a record starting up.
I hated that effect. That was literally the one thing I literally wrote in my notes, that the start sounds obnoxious. Because I don't like again, it's kind of like a pitch bending thing, and I'm just, that's like my rule of thumb, is just like I don't enjoy pitch bending at all in songs. But it was all right after that. It did the job. It was okay. However, I do have a thing, but you say it's quite complex harmonically. Yeah, there only really seems to be a harmonic shift, like 1 minute 25 in. So is there something that I've completely missed lying underneath that you think is actually quite good harmonically beforehand?
Well, I mean, first of all, harmonic shift isn't the only thing that makes something harmonically complex.
But I mean, like, it was like a tonal center, is what I mean. Like, there wasn't any, like, change.
That would be tonality rather than harmony. And those are two very different areas. So yeah, that was the first time that the key changed or modulated, or whatever. But in terms of the chord sequence used, it sort of takes you, in my opinion, in places again where you don't expect it to, but they still fit really well. Like, it's not the chords used, I didn't do a full analysis, but it took you places again where you wouldn't expect it to in terms of a regular chord sequence, but it still fit really, really well. So it was sort of not necessarily noticeable until you listen in depth and go, oh, that chord shouldn't go after that one, but it does, and it fits, and it works really, really well. I mean, no, as I said before, I made a sort of point about how the music sounds almost too good for the game. I think the music fits in with the background very well, because it's a very very detailed, very lifelike background. The game itself is quite a simple game in terms of like just a regular sort of puzzle platformer game. But it's the whole concept and the idea that's very unique, and then the music to go along with it gives it that sort of more unique feel, and that's why I liked it. On to the final piece on my list, and it's from a game called Ken Follett's The Pillars of the Earth. And the piece that I picked is Philip of Gwynedd. Very sorry if I said that wrong. And it's composed by Tilo Alperman. So this game is a point-and-click adventure, almost like a visual novel, based on Follett's 1989 novel of the same name. And it was released in 3 books. So book 1 was released in August 2017, book 2 was released in December 2017, and book 3 was released in March of 2018. The story is set it's set over quite a wide time period, roughly from like 1135 to 1189, 1190. The story just basically follows a lot of different characters and how their lives intertwine at a time of, poverty and a very religious time, as well as a lot of corruption, a lot of stark contrast between the wealthy and the poor, and it just sort of goes through how people's lives intertwine and all the drama that ensues. And it's a very entertaining game, and I'm sure book as well. I haven't read the book. In terms of the music, in general, it adds to the dramatic and dark atmosphere of the game, as well as sort of drawing on influences of music from around that time. So, for example, this piece which I've picked, which introduces the character of Prior Philip, who's the church prior, obviously, it encapsulates the church music and harmonies and cadences, and the time is sort of like Renaissance sort of choral music. The music and the sound design of the game has been very highly praised, as every small detail that's in the story has a sound or has music to accompany that.
I could dream of something like that. I was saying I could dream of something like that, where you have a sound effect or a song for everything you do. Like you step outside your house and all of a sudden there's an orchestra playing.
Yeah, I need a soundtrack for my life. Like,
I honestly, get John Williams in now, please. Like, I think it's a bit like Dark Souls, I thought, the indie game, which I didn't really enjoy because, well, I kept on dying. And I had no idea what I was doing. But it's got the kind of dark effect, church-like thing, which I really enjoy. It has a very surrounding power, I think. My question is, I think this is because of the version that I heard. It might not be actually part of the soundtrack, so I could be wrong. But do you think it would work better with like the real voices as opposed to the synth effect, or do you think that the synth effect still holds its own?
I don't think that was synth effects.
Oh, was it not?
Or if it was, it might have been enhanced. But because the rest of it isn't. So they have, I almost picked the sort of opening one, which has a woman's voice over the top of it. And a couple of others which aren't synth effects. But it does sound very electronically produced. I do see your point, because it's not really got words to it. And it's a very sort of, you could very easily put it onto like a MIDI thing and have it sound semi-real. No, I'm not going to say fully real, because it's not, it wouldn't have the same effect. But because of the drone and the very, very simple melody over the top, it could very easily be produced on MIDI.
Yes.
I didn't think it was, but again, it might be. Or at least somewhat enhanced by MIDI. If you couldn't get that many singers, maybe have like have a line sung by one person and then filled out by MIDI sounds. But I think it would have been better, like with real voices, to help create that atmosphere rather than it sounding. I think having something sounding electronically produced doesn't have the same effect as it, because it's supposed to sound like it's in a church. So if it was produced electronically, it's hard to get, unless you add tons of fake reverb and everything, it's hard to get that sort of authentic church sounding vocals. But again, this is a video game, so it might not be 100% like real sounds. So that's my list complete for this week.
So yeah, I am actually really interested in video game soundtracks as well, but I'm more interested with songs that are put onto games and why they are put onto the games in question. So my list is a bit different from Sarah's in the fact that I've got a mixture of songs which were composed for a game and songs which were put onto a game which I have played in the past. So I'm going to start off actually with one that was composed for the video game, and that one is the song, or the theme rather, to Big Blue from Mario Kart 8, the F-Zero inspired track. So it is an arrangement of the original F-Zero music from the game on the SNES, and it's adapted for that track, Big Blue, as part of the DLC for Mario Kart 8. DLC, in case you don't know, means downloadable content. So I've actually had constant arguments with my brother as to what we think is the best music in Mario Kart 8, and whilst he thinks Shy Guy Falls, and I originally thought Dolphin Shoals because of the saxophone solo alone, I now realise that this is the best one of the lot, in my opinion. So it's a modern day twist on the synth electro sound of the original, and it goes in line with Mario Kart 8's proclivity to adapt real instruments into the songs, as opposed to using digital sounds as they did on previous titles. So for themes on tracks like Mario Circuit, GBA Mario Circuit, or N64 Royal Raceway, or Wii Moo Moo Meadows, they were all done digitally, but now they've been adapted to actually have an orchestra, or a band rather, playing them, which I think is a really good addition, and it adds to the ambience of the game so well. I mean, Mario Kart 8 is just an exceptional game. And in terms of this song itself, I love the interplay between the sax and the guitar during the solo section, as well as the solos themselves and the opening riff. Just basically everything about the song. And it adds to the intensity of the track, because it's a really difficult course. I believe it's the last one in the entire game if you go up, down, in terms of courses. And because of its like tight corners and tricky turns and speeding sections, I think it adds to the intensity of that track absolutely brilliantly. And I always groove along every time I play it, so that's why I've decided to feature it on my list.
Yeah, this is the only game on this list that I have played. because the other games, you probably see why they're not really my kind of thing. I do like this. It sort of reminds me of an anime fight scene.
Yeah.
It has that sort of sound to it, and I couldn't quite pin I think it's the guitars. I couldn't quite pin exactly what it was, but for some reason it just took me to like a fight scene in an anime that I've seen. But anyway, yeah, it does. It adds to the sort of intensity of the track. But what I was wondering was, because when I tend to play Mario Kart, and I like the piece, I tend to get distracted by the piece and start singing it. So do you think in this context it helps or hinders the driving element?
Both. Because I think it helps because, like, you kind of, with want of a better word and without wanting to use a pun, it does drive you on. And, like, sorry, I know it's bad, but there was literally no other way that came to my mind. But it does genuinely, like, push you forward. And, like, you know, it keeps you going. And I can just hear, like, the intense guitar solo and the intense saxophone solo, thinking, oh, you can keep on going. But then I also think, when I'm racing it, I think, okay, maybe I could try and learn this solo. Okay, what notes have I got to do? I've got to do this one. I've got to look at the track because I'm about to fall off the edge. Okay, yeah. So I think it does a bit of both. It's the same with, let's say, Mario Kart Wii, for example, which is the game that I've grown up with, and I'm sure a lot of people listening will have also grown up with, and still play now. But like, whenever things like, you know, the soundtrack to things like Coconut Mall or Wario's Gold Mine, whenever they come up, I always start singing along. It does hinder it a little bit, but not as much as, you know, it might do, especially if I'm listening to the music and singing basically just singing along to it. So I hope you like that rendition. But I think it has a mixture of the two.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the track where on Mario Kart 8 where I sing along and always fall off is is it DK Jungle or something?
DK Jungle, yes.
I can't remember what it is, but it's like really jazzy and really cool. And I just find myself going diddle-it, like, I've fallen off again. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's basically me as well.
But but I think the difference is that one's just more like jazzy and fun, whereas this one has that sort of driving element to it. No pun intended.
Yes.
Has that sort of driving force. Yeah,
it grooves. It's definitely very groovy, and it has that kind of, you know, intensity to it to match the intensity of the track. And I mean, my brother, he said to me straight away, he said, Harry, this is the most difficult track on 200cc. Good luck. And I did it first time. But the song, it literally just pushed me forward, and I was like, okay. All that considered, I think it actually just adds to the track as a whole. Like, obviously it adds to track. I mean, Mario Kart 8's music as a whole is incredible. And if you go onto the YouTube, there's probably a playlist of all of the songs that are featured in Mario Kart 8. And having played the game quite a bit, I can barely think of any off the top of my head which I don't like. But this one, I think, takes the biscuit ahead of everything else. But it's the best of a competitive bunch, let's put it that way. Moving back into the realms of actual soundtrack songs, I actually basically have created a question already, but I don't know whether Sarah wants to ask it anyway. I mean, that can depend on the song itself, but it is the song Warm It Up by Logic featuring Young Sinatra. So it's partly here because I personally think it's a great song and I really like it, but I also think because it's on FIFA 19, I don't understand like why a song like this is featured in FIFA, which, bear in mind, is PEGI 3. And the main problem is that all the stuff in the song which is censored out. So you remove a lot of the punchlines, you remove a lot of the quirks or the rhyming schemes and things like that. And I get that they want to create the soundtrack to football with this. And there has been a proliferation of rap and grime music amongst young people. And so EA wants to reflect that by including rap and grime music in the soundtrack. But again, the song just loses a lot of its sense when heard in game. And as a result of this as well, it has led to what many believe to be a decline in quality of the FIFA soundtrack. So a load of people no longer listen to it anymore. They normally just put it on mute. And I have actually done an article on this, by the way, so you can go and check that out on my website, shameless plug. But in terms of the song itself, it's Logic, who's actually just retired from music. He brings in his alias Young Sinatra, which he brought in on his earlier mixtapes, to combine the hard like boom bap rap of Logic and Young Sinatra and the trap feel on his Bobby Tarantino mixtapes, which this track comes from. So this comes from Bobby Tarantino too. And I love the rap beat on the verses, and then the transition from rap into trap, I think, is excellent. And whilst the mixtape itself I was slightly underwhelmed by, for the most part. I think this song is an absolute gem, and it is definitely a standout in Logic's discography. But I'm just not sure why EA decided it would be a good idea to put us. I mean, I actually did some research on this for the article that I did, and I found out that 39 of the 76 lines in the song have something censored in them. Get me that.
Yeah. I liked the background riff, and that was sort of it of what I liked. But it's not really about whether I liked it or not. In terms of the song itself, I agree that if you censor all the words, you're just gonna end up with a song of gaps, rather than like, I hate it when they do that on like the radio. And I know I don't listen to the radio that much, but when you're like singing along to a song and then the word's just gone, and it's not right. It doesn't feel right. So I do agree with you in that respect. But regardless, like say they just wanted to put the song, say you were on the FIFA soundtrack board or whatever, and they wanted to put the song in, how would you resolve the issue? Would you have carried on with the censorship? Would you have removed it altogether and replaced it, and if you would have done, what song with, or would you have upped the PEGI rating on the game but kept the swearing in?
Well, FIFA shouldn't be a PEGI 3 in itself because it encourages child gambling, because of the fact you can buy packs on the game with actual real life money and there's no limit on that. So That's not good. So in reality, it shouldn't be PEGI 3 in itself. Okay. But let's just say for argument's sake that it is kept at PEGI 3. Mm-hmm. And like you put on a song which, again, like whenever I heard the song come on in game, I was like, oh yeah, this song's great. I love this song. But you hear it and it's like there's just a gap. And there are so many gaps. Like it just loses a lot of its sense. And it's just, and so I would definitely remove it because I know like the golden age of the FIFA soundtracks. I'd like to say I'm an expert on it. Having played a lot of FIFA games, I'd like to say I'm an expert. And a lot of the songs on it are like kind of indie alternative or pop or rock or kind of like, or some electronic stuff. And a load of people gelled with that era, and because it had the perfect blend, and there was no like, you know, stuff that didn't really suit a football soundtrack. I mean, unless they want to bring back the days of football hooliganism with songs that incite violence, because the song I was actually going to feature instead of this was the song Where and When by P Money and Giggs. And that basically is a song which involves P Money going around threatening someone to basically shoot them down. And you think, why would you have a song on a PEGI 3 game that is about violence? Bear in mind, A, football's hooliganism past, and B, the fact that it's a PEGI 3 rating, and a lot of the punchlines are taken out, and a lot of the lines are taken out as well. So, to me, it just doesn't make any sense. So, if I was in that scenario and someone pitched that to me, I would have said, find not a lighter rap song, because I know there is actually one on FIFA 20, Same Old Story by Skepta, which has like a couple of lines censored out, or a couple of words censored out, which is fine. Like, one or two is absolutely fine. But when it's like, you know, as I say, 40 or 39 of 76 lines, that's very excessive. So,
yeah,
I think for me, I would remove it and put in either a less explicit rap song or one which I know would appease a lot of the FIFA community. Again, I personally love the song, so I'm happy to put it on in terms of, like, you know, me loving the song, but also it's a point of discussion, like, why is this song on a game which is PEGI 3? My next song actually is another song that was on FIFA, admittedly. It was back in FIFA 06, but I'm more than happy to say that not only is this song excellent, and not only does this song, I think, is a perfect FIFA song, but a load of other people do, and I think it's top, like, most people's, or like in the top 5 of most people's lists of all-time FIFA soundtrack songs, and that is Helicopter by Block Party. This is an absolutely brilliant song. It's on FIFA 06, it's on Burnout Revenge as well, Burnout Legends, and Project Gotham Racing 3, which I'd never heard of before looking this up, amongst many, many others. Like, I think it was on like Guitar Hero and Rock Hero or whatever, those kind of games as well. But it has purported political undertones, so it has comments on the US red states, which means those who vote the Republican Party, and the UK apathy to the whole situation, and also how they just sit by and let things happen as they do. And the album that it's from, Silent Alarm, is meant to be like a reflection of the thoughts of the jilted youth at the time. It's like mid-2000s. I think it came out in 2003 2004, 2005. So it's meant to reflect the thoughts of young people around that time. And I think it does brilliantly. I love the album as a whole. I think on this song in particular, they pull off the fast tempo because I think it's like 170 beats per minute. So the drummer has a lot on his hands to keep up. And I think he does so brilliantly. And the guitar riff as well, which stays throughout most of the track, I really like. And I know that the chorus does only consist of like one line, but as I said before, if it's a song which maybe might sound repetitive in terms of vocals, but has a musical growth, it's still going to be absolutely fine by me. And I think this song does. So as a result of that, not only do I understand why people put it in their top FIFA songs, but it'd probably be in my top 3.
I like this. I really liked the vocal, the sound of the song and the vocals really complemented each other very nicely. And I imagine myself just listening to this, whenever. But why do you think it was used in so many games? And do you think it I know you haven't obviously played them, but do you think it would work in all of those cases? Do you think it's that kind of versatile song?
I think it is a very versatile song because it's got, again, if you put it in Burnout Revenge or Burnout Legends, again, it has a quick tempo, and obviously Burnout is a very quick pace, is a very fast-paced driving game. And so you want to have a song which is like reflects that. You'd want to have a song that, again, no pun intended, drives you on. Actually, definitely pun intended this time. But it drives you on, it keeps you going, and it pushes you on to go further and further. And in FIFA as well, again, it's like it gets you hyped up before you go into a game. It's like, and gets you in the zone, match day ready. And this song does. Like, this must have been on many footballers' playlists at the time. And so, with all that in mind, it gets you in the zone. It gets you ready for a match. It gets you ready to, play against your friends or go into a career mode match and beat up some Polish team in the first tier or whatever. And, get you in that mindset. And that's what they want to achieve. It's to get that match day experience, that match day feel through the music. And I don't think they achieve it with the later songs all that much, even though I know a lot of footballers listen to rap and grime, obviously. But with this song, I think they absolutely nail it. And I think it's the same thing within the racing games as well.
I mean, there can be a massive difference between what people who play this sport actually listen to and then what would actually hype you up for a game. Yeah,
like I know Ian Wright, for example, the famous ex-Arsenal footballer, he would, in driving to training, he would have Classic FM on.
What a lad.
Yeah, I love Ian Wright. He's an absolute legend. And he would have, like, rap as well. He would have that thing. But I think he said, I was actually listening to a program that my friend recommended me about classical music in sports, and they had Ian Wright on, and I think he was saying that, I think it was The Marriage of Figaro. He said that was something that got him in the zone for a game because it was kind of like a relaxed mindset. It puts you in that thing, I guess. But also, then you have, he also has the rap and the grime and potentially the rock as well, I don't know, to get him match ready. So again, it's all taste variant, but most people are in agreement that this song is not only excellent, but it works as part of a soundtrack to any game. And I can definitely see where they're coming from. Now we move away from the realm of FIFA and into the world of Sega Land. Not Sega Land. I don't know if there is a game called Sega Land. But with the main theme to the Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz game, which is entitled Monkey Island, or it's the theme for the world of Monkey Island. Unfortunately, I can't find this song anywhere on Spotify, but of course don't forget that all the other songs that we do mention in this episode are going to be put into a Spotify playlist for your enjoyment or displeasure, depending on how you feel about the songs. But this one I genuinely could not find anywhere, but it is on YouTube, so you can go and look at it on there. So it was composed for, as I say, the Wii game Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz, which was released in 2006, but it also features in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing as the main theme for the Super Monkey Ball races. So that's how I became acquainted with the song. Although in the game it actually comes from, Ai and his crew, Ai is the main character of Super Monkey Ball, they need to retrieve the remaining pieces of the Golden Banana Bunch stolen by the villainous Captain Krabuchin, which I think is an excellent name for a villain, personally. But I personally think this suits the lively nature of Super Monkey Ball down to the ground. And I love the transitions into the separate sections, the harmonies, and the bouncy atmosphere. Again, Ai and his crew are normally bouncing around in like these kind of Zorb balls. And then there's the sense of urgency also provided by the brass instruments too. Although it is actually a remix of the Wet and Windy music found in Super Monkey Ball Touch and Roll, which was released on the DS the year prior. And it's another one of those songs which I get distracted from whenever I hear it. So therefore it takes me off course.
Yeah, I mean, out of context, it's not obviously something I would listen to, but it is sort of a classic Wii music. It reminds me a lot of the Mario Kart courses, the more sort of nondescript ones, the ones where you're like, oh, that sounds like Mario Kart, but don't know which ones it is. That's not me saying it's bad. I'm just saying for me, it's not very distinguishable compared to something else. But having said that, I think the music, in terms of complexity, it sort of got better as it went on. My question is, what moment in the game does it relate to? But I don't know if you haven't played the specific game.
As far as I'm aware, Monkey Island is like the first world in the game. So
Okay.
It's like one of the first proper songs that you hear in the context of the game. I know that Wet and Windy, the remix it is from, that is World 1. But having never played it, and unfortunately having never seen a game in itself, I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But I do know that this is I say, it is when you start playing Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing and you go into a Super Monkey Ball track, you have to buy separate songs alongside it, but this is the standard default song that you don't have to buy. So it's the first song that you hear in the Super Monkey Ball soundtrack, or the soundtrack to the Super Monkey Ball races. So, and I just really enjoyed again the nature of the song tied in with the track and the driving experience as a whole. I think it worked really well. And so as a result of that, I thought it was definitely something that I could include in this list as a song composed for a game. But moving back into the realms of songs adapted, or not adapted, but put into a game, my final song comes from one of my favourite games of all time in Forza Horizon 4. I didn't enjoy it as much as Forza Horizon 3, but I still love Forza Horizon 4 a lot. It's so much fun, there's so much stuff to do, and the soundtrack to it is, again, worse than 3, but still really good, especially on the bass arena, which my song comes from, which is dedicated to the best in electronic music. And the song is Are We Still Young by Grant featuring Juno. So Forza Horizon 4 actually saw a deluge of Monster Cat songs added to it, and this is the best of the lot, albeit only just. There are so many other ones added onto it, which I absolutely love. And the other one I'd probably recommend is Cheat Codes by Nitro Fun, which again came so close to featuring, but I decided to go with Are We Still Young instead. And it features dreamy vocals by Juno, reminiscing on better times, and the production in this I think is euphoric. It's kind of just a state of euphoria, kind of you're at a point where it's elation almost. You've passed something or you've done something right. I can definitely imagine it playing in that particular moment. And Grant's inspective production style really shines through, and it makes for an amazing song, again, when you're driving around in game. I guess because of the drum beat and the chord progression throughout. And so as a result of that, I just found it to be, not only an amazing song outside of the game, but an amazing song inside the game.
Juno's voice is really nice, and something I would definitely listen to in a different context. But again, that's kind of it for me. And I do appreciate the production and how sort of seamless and nice it is. But it doesn't really do anything for me personally. But I can appreciate why you think it's good and why a lot of people think it's good. I just wondered how it sort of fit in with the rest of the soundtrack of the game, because I don't know the game or the soundtrack of the game that well.
Okay, so in Forza Horizon 4, there are 6 radio stations. So there's one for electropop. There's one for bog standard EDM stuff, which is where this song comes in. There's one for rap and hip hop, which is sometimes a bit edgy, but sometimes... I mean, the song X Gon Give It To You by DMX is on Forza Horizon 3. Why is that song on a PEGI 3 game? I do not know. Then there's also Horizon XS, which is for alternative rock. And then there's Hospital Records Radio, which is drum and bass. So that's that song's released by the record label, Hospital Records. It's the only licensed record label in the entire game, whereas on Forza Horizon 3 you had Vagrant and Epitaph, and also Future Classic. So they reduced the number of songs from Forza Horizon 3 to Forza Horizon 4, which I don't quite understand. But then there's also a classical radio station. In terms of the radio station as a whole, I think Monstercat have delved into like gaming. They've done a thing for Rocket League, or they've done a soundtrack for Rocket League. So they have branched out into video game realms a lot. And so with that in mind, like it kind of fits in quite well. But then there are also other songs on the Bass Arena radio station, which are kind of like, they don't really do anything. They're kind of just drums and not really much else to it, which is a bit of a shame. But this one actually has like a discernible melody, as do most of the other Monstercat songs. But there are some which are just like, okay, all I can hear is drums and there's not really much else going on when I'm driving around.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really have the effect on me when I'm driving as songs like Are We Still Young or Cheat Codes do. I think this song fits really well into the overall soundtrack, and also onto the radio station, because it is one of the. It's certainly the best one from the radio station. But there is like a noticeable difference between, like, you know, the really high end songs on that radio station and the ones which I just think skip or change to a different radio station because I can barely hear anything.
Yeah, I didn't realise that it had radio stations on it, so I guess it would fit in with the style of each thing. I didn't realise that.
Yeah, so it's not like just one thing. But that is my video game soundtrack / composed for video game song score list thing. Yay.
Yeah, so now we move on to our question, which was submitted by Jack. So thanks for that, Jack. So the question that he gave us was favourite song by a band with X amount of members in it. We got to pick the numbers. Thanks for the flexibility with that. So we picked two different numbers. We picked 3 and 6. You know, not typical. Like a lot of bands have like 4 or 5 members, so we decided to pick things that were quite different to, you know, your standard size.
And also, I decided to just say, like, you know, add a bit of variety. We had to include songs which we haven't mentioned on the or by bands which we haven't mentioned on the podcast before. So just to add a little bit of a novelty factor to it, if you like. So my choices. So I'll go with the 3 member first, and this is by pure coincidence. There's no ulterior. There is no other reason behind it. But it is also actually a song which featured on a FIFA soundtrack. And it is the song Call It What You Want by Foster the People. It develops throughout, and there's always like a constant changing of musical ideas and electronic effects to add to the vocalist, Mark Foster, who basically writes lyrics about how the music industry are trying to box him into one specific genre, whereas he just wants to go and write whatever he wants to write about. And I really enjoyed it. It's a great song to listen to, like, on its own accord. And again, the chorus is repetitive, but there's always so much going on background musically that I never get tired of it. And I've also done an arrangement for it for big band, so, you know, it had to stick. It had to be a good song if I've arranged it for. If I had had to go through the pain of arranging it for a big band number, it had to be something good. So that's why I've decided to pick this. My 6 member thing is very, very tenuous, because it's not a group or band per se, but it's more the members of a record label coming together to produce a song. And I hope that you can forgive me on this one. But it is the song Athlete by Boy Better Know featuring Goldie One. I heard this song when it first came out a couple of years ago. It's the second song that they've actually released under the Boy Better Know alias after Too Many Man back in 2009. I mean, you wouldn't like it, Sarah, for one, but it has such a energetic beat and energetic chorus as well from Goldie One, and it's just something that hypes me up every single time I hear it. And before you say anything, I'm well aware that Wiley is on it, and I'm well aware that Wiley has now been cancelled, but please excuse me on this song alone, because I ignore Wiley's part anyway, because I think that's the one part in the song which I'm not a huge fan of. Even before the controversy emerged, I didn't really like his verse, but all the other verses in this song I absolutely love. So therefore, that's my 6 group member band pick, which is, again, a bit sketchy, but excuse me on this one.
I mean, yeah, I don't think that counts, but that's just my opinion. Just because they're not a band that's released multiple things, they've only done that one song, and they're not a band. They're a group of people got together. My opinion, but, you know, I'll let you have it for this one. And also, quick question, do you get all of your musical tastes from FIFA games, by any chance?
I used to.
That makes sense.
No word of a lie, up until about 2016, 2015, some of them came from the FIFA soundtrack, and some of them still do. And I've heard a load of albums by the FIFA soundtrack songs or artists themselves. So
yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I was just pointing out.
No, but they're on the game also to, like, you know, not just FIFA, but like any game itself, like Burnout, Forza, anything. They're on the game to help you discover new artists. So
yeah.
Swings and roundabouts, but yeah, basically
Okay.
up until about 2015, 2016, most of my songs were basically just FIFA songs.
Okay, so we'll move on to my choices now, and so my 3-member band is Biffy Clyro. I've definitely never mentioned them before, and the song that I've chosen is That Golden Rule. I don't know if you know that song, but it's such a unique song. I remember the first time hearing it and I was like, this is like nothing I've ever heard before. It has a lot of like varying time signatures, or at least not varying time signatures, but a lot of different cross rhythms and polyrhythms used on it, and especially in the post-chorus bridge section. I was going to call it a mid-late, but it's not a mid-late because it's very long, and it has like string, like orchestral instruments in it as well in that point, and it's just an exceptional piece of music. Highly recommend it. So my 6-member band is a band I didn't realise had 6 members until I was trying to find it, but Blondie has 6 members, and I didn't know this.
Do they?
Yes.
I
didn't know this. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm definitely picking a Blondie song. Or at least I did in the beginning. I couldn't work out, because there was an album of theirs from like late 80s. I think they'd split up maybe at that point, that might be why, but they only had 5 members. But definitely their earlier songs had 6 members. I couldn't pick one song, however, because they're great. I picked 2 songs. I've picked One Way or Another, which I think everyone knows. It's kind of an iconic song now. And the other one I picked was Atomic, which again a lot of people do know. But I just love the riff in it, the guitar riff. It's quite repetitive. I like it still, and I like the feel of like galloping on a horse with the drums and stuff. And it's a great song, all in all. So that's why I picked those.
Okay, well that is the answer to the question. So again, thanks, Jack. It took a bit of thought process, and I realised, because I did actually have a choice for the 3-member band, but then just as I was about to say, I realised that I've mentioned it on the podcast before. That very song, in fact. So
oh right.
It took a lot of thinking to try and get that song in the end. So it's a good question, but again, if you want any questions submitted, then just send it to us individually or publish it on the page so that we can answer them. Pretty much.
Yeah, now we move on to the final section, which is what we've been listening to this week. My first song is a song called Hell by Eliza and the Bear. I used to love this song, and then it sort of dropped off my radar. It came out in like 2018, so it sort of dropped off my radar for like a year or so. And then I saw someone listening to it on like the Spotify friend bar at the side the other day, and I was like, oh, that was a good song. And it's sort of like, it's an upbeat pop song. It's slightly indie influences, but less so than what I tend to listen to normally. Straight back on my playlist, just such an all-round bop. My second song is a new release by Phineas, who I did mention I think last week, and it's a song called What They'll Say About Us, and it's very much like his more emotional, heartfelt pop ballad kind of songs, so if you like that kind of Phineas, you'll love this song. And my final song is a song called Rapture by Declan McKenna. He has a new album out called Zeros. I'm yet to hear the whole album, however I have heard this song. It's great, you know. I'm yet to dislike something by Declan McKenna. It's very typical Declan, sounds, vocals, lyrics, everything, but it's so good. For start, he has a very like unique sound, but all of his songs do sound different, if that makes sense. You can tell the difference between each of his songs, but he has a very Declan McKenna sound. So yeah, that's my list. That's what I've been listening to this week.
So on my random album anime arc adventure, I am going through the realm of grime music at the moment. So obviously I've been listening to a lot of that. And one song which I've been listening to a lot is I Spy by Skepta, which I absolutely love the beat. The lyrics are just basically about trying to get loads of money and stuff, but I just love the chorus. He says, I spy with my little eye something beginning with a capital P, paper. That's what I see. I love it. I just think that's really funny, personally. So, and that combined with the beat as well, I think it works so well. So I've been grooving onto that for a while. And similarly, another grime artist, which I was kicking myself for not discovering for a while, Akala, who actually wrote a book called Natives, Race and Class in the Ruins of Empire, which I highly recommend. It is absolutely fantastic. Go and give it a read if you want. Just go and give it a read. Never mind if you want to. Just go and give it a read. And he's obviously a well-established rapper in his own right. And his first album has like a kind of rap rock, but then also hip-hop and politically conscious side. And the song which I've been listening to is Stand Up by him. And it's kind of like an almost a rally cry to troops to, get people to stand up, take action, rise up, and basically take action. I couldn't quite figure out exactly what it was just yet. I haven't heard it overly to understand the entire song's message just yet. But I've been listening to it quite a bit. And it's got a rap rock feel, which I absolutely love. So that's why it features there. My final one, I've only got 3 this week, sadly, not the usual 4 as I do. I actually also decided to peruse through the Kooks' discography, and I came across a song which I used to listen to a lot when I was about 9 or 10, and it's the song Shine On. I really like this one. It's a really nice song. I love the shifts in like harmonies, especially with the fact that the verse is in 1 key and the chorus is in a 2nd key. And whilst it's not like an overly complex song, I just really like the sound. Again, it's just one of those things which you can't put your finger on, but you just really like the sound of it. So, as a result of that, I was just like, oh yeah, I remember how good this song is. Let's listen to it a lot more. So, there you go. Very similar to that Eliza and the Bear song that you mentioned earlier. So, that is my list complete. And with that, it is also the podcast complete for this week. So, obviously, next week is our Tri-Weekly Year Edition special thing. So, do stay tuned for that because, well, it's going to be a very fun year regardless of what year it is, unless it's 1947, in which case I might struggle. But in which...
I'll pick something like 1865 or something.
In which case I'll just pick anything released by, I don't know, Adolf Sachs or something. But yeah, it's... But yeah, so next week is our tri-episode year special, so... do stick around for that and make sure, obviously, to listen to that when it comes out. But we really hope that you have enjoyed this week's episode. Thank you very, very much for listening. And until next time,
we'll see you then.